Vision. Following clues left by our ancestors, we unbury the past to reveal a knowledge of unfathomable value, putting us just a little closer to our own true birthrights. From the secret history of a possible bloodline of Jesus Christ, the secret history of America's founders, to the secret history of extraterrestrial interaction on our planet, here to bring light to the night. Your host for Night Vision Radio, Renee Barnett.
Hey everyone, how are you? Well, here we are at the end of another week, and I'm sure it's been just as harrowing for everyone as it has been for me. This is always a good little getaway for me every Friday evening, just to sort of suspend my regular life and come and talk to you. So I'm so glad that you're here to join me. We have a great show planned for tonight. But before we get started, I want to let you guys know, I know our wonderful historian James Martin has a lot of fans among you, and just want to let you know that he is on the road again. So he'll be back with us really, really soon. And so we'll say hi to James because I know he's listening. Yeah, right. It's 4:00 in the morning where he is. But he might be. You just never know. I guarantee you he'll listen to the replay. But anyhow, I just wanted to take just a moment to tell you that we have some incredible changes coming up this year at KGRA. Changes and additions and amazing things that are going to be for everyone, but more specifically, we've got a lot of new things that are going to be available to our members only. And if you're not a member yet, this is really the time to join the KGRA family, because when these things start kicking off, you may be at an advantage to be one of the original members. So if you would please, if you've been thinking about joining but delaying it, I'm just saying, now's the time. Don't say I didn't tell you. And if you want to check out a monthly membership, here is the website. It's live.kgradb.com. And for your promo code, put VISION, VISION, VISION. And if you're looking toward an annual membership, which we hope you are, it's live.kgradb.com. And the promo code to enter for an annual membership is VISION22. So please consider it and don't delay. Hop on there and join the KGRA family. We'd love to have you. And I guarantee you, you're going to be really surprised and excited about some of the things that we have coming up this very year. I mean, coming right up. So join us now, and you won't be left behind. So anyway, tonight's show is going to be really great. You know, it takes me back to when I was working on my very first television series. It was called Strange Universe, and it was a daily news magazine that played 5 days a week. It was a syndicated show here in Los Angeles. I believe it was on Channel 9, and it ran at 11:30 every night. And it was my first TV job, and it's to this day is my favorite one I ever had, even though I worked on a million shows after that. But it was so much fun. And in fact, I had gone directly there from print journalism, as I was the managing editor of UFO magazine, working with Vicki Cooper Ecker as the editor-in-chief, and her husband, Don Ecker, who you all may know from his shows here on this network. And I worked there for about 5 years and co-hosted, or rather announced, Don's show UFOs Tonight for that time period. But when I first arrived at Strange Universe, it was part of my job to pitch show ideas, segment ideas. And so every pitch meeting, which they held very often, the whole room would fill up. We'd all be around a big table, and they would go around the table, and each person was expected to have at least 3 good pitches, good story ideas. And my very first pitch meeting, I pitched a story called The Sherman Ranch. And the Sherman Ranch is a ranch in Utah that a friend of mine had, who was a journalist, a writer, a reporter for the Deseret News in Salt Lake. And he also wrote for UFO Magazine. So he was tasked, it was Halloween time, and his editor said, go out and find a strange story for us for Halloween. So he found this story about this family, the Sherman family, that had been plagued by strange occurrences, high strangeness on their ranch. And some of you may now know that ranch by the name that it's called and has been called for the last so many years, Skinwalker Ranch. And the interesting thing about that, or maybe not so interesting, is that a lot of the research that was done out there has still yet to be made public. And we were kind of excited. Oh, I stopped in the middle of the story. So my friend Zach Van Eyck was the reporter there at the Deseret News. He wrote the story, and then a gentleman who happened to be a billionaire in Las Vegas named Robert Bigelow contacted Zach and asked for an introduction to the Shermans. And Robert Bigelow bought that ranch, put researchers out there. It became known as Skinwalker Ranch. And they did release some information, and there was a book written about it by George Knapp. And forgive me, the other author is, his name is escaping me. I'm remembering George because I knew him personally, or I know him personally, but the other gentleman I'm forgetting. But even in the book, they didn't go through it all. And I know I tried like heck to get George Knapp on a television show I was working on, Conspiracy Theory, with Jesse Ventura, and they didn't want to do any interviews. And I said, you just released a book. What are you talking about? And he goes, no, we don't want to get weirdos coming out there. So it was all very strange because people still are left wondering. But now my guest tonight has a whole new story. And some of you may have heard about it already, but admittedly, I had not. So since we've spoken and she agreed to come on the show, I've been looking into it a little bit. And oh my gosh, I'm so excited. But first, let me tell you about my guest. She is the MUFON State Director for Colorado, and she's a star investigator for MUFON and the team lead administrator for MUFON's Mars team. She's the host of MUFON's What's Up radio broadcast right here on KJRADB, and that's on Tuesdays, if I'm not mistaken, along with her co-hosts, Chris DePerno and Tara Delius. Boy, I probably butchered that name, but I'll let our guest, Katie Paige, correct me right now.
It's nice to see you again. It's been a little while. I think we were on a show together with Jessica Jones, Into the Portal. So yeah, it's been a while. I think maybe last February or something like that. But it's good to see you.
Was it that reason? I was thinking it was more like 2 years, but time has lost all meaning for me during the COVID thing.
Right.
I have no concept of, it seems like missing time. I mean, we all know what that's about, but it seems like, because I'll think, oh, that was just last year. No, it couldn't have been last year because it was pre-COVID.
Right. It's interesting like how we all talk about that, like pre-COVID, post-COVID. It's like a whole line.
chunk of missing time or something.
Right. Yeah. But our new co-host is Tara Delius. I had to practice that a few times myself. So yeah.
Please forgive me, Delius. I won't forget it again. I know you said it to me earlier, and I just totally blew it. But anyway, I hope she'll forgive me. And it's a great show.
She's sweet.
And I haven't seen her yet, but I'll have to tune in and check out how the new synergy goes with the three of you. So, I'm embarrassed that I didn't know anything about this new area. When you told me there was a place in Colorado, I immediately assumed, it has something to do with Crestone in that, is it
the San Luis Valley?
San Luis Valley. Oh, yeah, it's the Winter Valley that Skinwalker's in. San Luis Valley, they call it Mysterious Valley.
Right.
And
Old
So I immediately thought,
Snippy the horse, old Snippy the horse down there. One
oh
of the
my
very first
God,
mutilations. Yeah,
I
that's
forgot
further
about
down. That's
Snippy,
further down south in Colorado.
and a little
But
bit west.
yeah, a little west, yeah, south, a little west. Yeah. But no, this is a whole different area. In UFO folklore, it was known as the Clearview Ranch or the Rocky Mountain Ranch. It was investigated by APRO. And it's interesting you mention Hunt for the Skinwalker, that original book with George Knapp, and it's Colm Kelleher, PhD, who was the other author on that book, because I had purchased that book. I got into ufology in 2012, looking for answers to questions that my family and I experienced down on this ranch. Now, I did not live on this property full time. I just spent a handful of times
Wait
there.
a minute.
My
You lived
mother,
there?
no, my mother was dating the gentleman that owned the ranch. So I spent time there.
You've
Yeah.
got a close connection.
Yeah. I was 9 to
Oh
12
my
years
goodness.
old during that time. And my mother worked for United Airlines and was dating a gentleman from there, and his family purchased that property. One of the first things that was reported on that property, it sat vacant for 7 to 12 years. They're not sure how long. And there was always rumors and speculations about the property already. But the first thing that they experienced out there were these humming sounds and these strange, almost like bangs and noises coming from underground, and they could not figure out what this was. And then the mutilation started. We'll get into that. But what's interesting about that book, I joined MUFON in 2012, and I purchased the book Hunt for the Skinwalker, not knowing anything about the Skinwalker Ranch, just thinking, oh, it's about a ranch and UFOs and high strangeness. And I get to that chapter, Other Hotspots, and I start reading about the Colorado Ranch. And because of the interesting dynamic of the family, even though they use pseudonyms for the name and the location, I knew it had to be the ranch from my childhood. So quickly, the state director for Colorado at the time was Doug Wilson, who was a great mentor to me. And Doug put me in contact. In the book, it said that there were 3 PhDs out there on that ranch property, which was a shock to me because I never knew anybody even investigated it or anybody knew anything about what was happening out there. So I would, if you can imagine, I sat on my living room floor for a couple hours just in pure shock. I'm calling my sister. I'm calling my mom. You're not going to believe this. So I learned there that Dr. Leo Sprinkle, PhD, was one of the investigators, along with Peter Van Arsdale and John Durr. One was a seismologist, and I'm not sure what the other one was. But anyway, so I learned their names and quickly wrote a letter to Dr. Sprinkle because he was old school and he's there in Laramie. And the next week I was sitting in his office and digging in his archives. John Schuessler, who is, one of the founding fathers of MUFON, actually knew a lot about the ranch property. And so he bestowed upon me the original briefing document, which I have right here. So it was really fascinating to learn all the research that was done on the ranch and to have confirmations of some memories that I had from being on the property. So, it's almost been now a decade of research into this property for me.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's just been mind blowing.
Do you ever take people out there and
I don't
overnight or anything like that?
I don't. I've driven around the area in the daytime. I'm still creeped out to go there in the evening. We have made contact with the people that live there now, and there's going to be some exciting things happening here this spring and summer out there. So yeah, it's neat that finally people are aware of it, and there's going to be some research done. So
the people that are living there now, they're living in a house on that property.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so apparently they seem okay with people researching.
Right. And I haven't talked to them personally yet because I had to sign an agreement that I wouldn't until a certain time period. I can't really get into that here because I've signed some non-disclosures. Gotcha. But they did tell me, and I think I can disclose at least this much, that one of the things they really talk about is this feeling or sense of being watched all the time. And that's something that stayed with me for decades, that sense of being watched constantly. So I was like, oh my gosh, there's still certain things going on out in that area. And what's fascinating too, and we talked a little bit about before the show about this, but I always felt that the activity was isolated to just the ranch property, that right there. But when I learned more about the research done, I learned about Bill Waugh, who was an undersheriff there, and there was another sheriff named George Yarnell out there. And me and a couple friends and fellow investigators flew out to Florida to do an investigation or an interview with Bill Waugh had passed away. So I talked with his widow and his son, Keith, and did a whole day interview with them. And what I learned from him and his widow pulled out this whole big, thick binder of newspaper articles from back in the day. So at the height of this activity was from 1975 to 1978. And I learned from all these articles that it just didn't happen on the ranch property, but the whole town of Kiowa, Elizabeth, Franktown, Simla, Rama. I mean, this whole stretch of area. So I've really looked into what's unique about this area. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. What, if you know, what is the Native American tribe in that area?
Yeah, Cheyenne and Arapaho, but we did have the Ute tribes would travel in and out.
Cheyenne and Arapaho to you.
Yeah, Cheyenne and Arapaho. We did have the Ute tribes, and of course the Kiowa, the Comanche, the Pawnee, and actually that area in general has just a huge, massive, Native American tribes. A lot of rivers, a lot of streams, a lot of creeks, and the geological, a lot of magnetism in the area, really highly magnetic. And in fact, when I looked at a lot of these high strangeness locations, like the Skinwalker Ranch, like Blind Frog Ranch, like Sedona, is it the Bradshaw Ranch, Marley Woods in Missouri. I found another case through MUFON's Mars program, going through all the historic cases of a place called Ohiopyle, Pennsylvania, that had a very similar activity there. And that's really highly magnetic as well. So all these high strangeness locations have that in common. And I don't know if you had recently seen David Pilates' Missing 401, the UFO Connection movie, that you have got to see this movie. I just watched it the other night. Wow. And they were talking about missing people in northern Colorado and into like Cheyenne and where is Leo from? Laramie, Wyoming. And they talk about these big aquifers underground, these water things. And a lot of these missing people with David Pilates and Missing 411 happen around water. So I think water plays a role somehow with this high strangeness, missing people. I don't know if it opens portals or what it is, but there's something to that.
I have seen that, and we don't have time to get into any more of my stories tonight, but off air, I want to tell you about another area about in Oklahoma. It's the town of Tahlequah, which is the capital of the Cherokee Nation, and this more particularly this place outside of town called Lost City, and another one called Sparrowhawk Mountain, where they have tons of this same type stuff. But I'll talk to you about it later, and maybe somebody will go out there and investigate sometime.
Right. That Native American connection is fascinating as well, because when I researched the history of the area, I mean, there was just, the Sand Creek Massacre was pretty close to that area, which is one of the most horrific massacres in the United States. Just really violent. And I wonder if that somehow gets recorded into the land or the water or the rocks. I don't know. But
I was going to ask you, do you think that sometimes that human emotion, that humans can have effect on the land, on the geology, even maybe, that it's like somehow their emotions get embedded there or change something about the place to make it different? I don't know. But what I was asking about the Native Americans is, what are there Native legends around this area? Have you heard what they have to say?
Yeah, there are, and there's also other interesting legends as well. The little town of Kiowa itself, it's it's still very rural to this day. Of course, it's much more developed than it was in the late 70s, but it's still pretty rural. But back in the late 1800s, it was divided. So they had ranchers on one side and farmers on the other. And there were fights and, shootouts and all, the wild west. And then, the gold rush came in and the trail was put in. But there was a tale of 4 horse thieves that were captured there and put in the local Kiowa jail. And a bunch of men came, broke them out, and they actually took them in their shackles and hung them in the trees really close to the ranch property. So, there's a lot of that kind of violent activity.
That's what they used to do to horse thieves. I know.
Right.
Oh,
so the history is pretty violent and pretty interesting. And I do wonder that too, what the human aspect is, if that can affect it as well.
Yeah. And now, could you give us a little detail on, or however you want to go with it? Don't let me, if you have a way that you want to tell the story, but, it'd certainly be interesting. I think the listeners would. In what are some of the strange events that happen, that have happened? And I'm assuming they're sort of reoccurring.
Right. One of the main things that happened out there were the cattle mutilations. And I'm sure most of your listeners know of Linda Moulton Howe. At the time in the late 70s, she lived out here in Colorado, and she was an investigative journalist. So she was out in that area in Elbert County. And in fact, Bill Wall, that undersheriff that I had mentioned earlier, is in her film A Strange Harvest.
I was just getting ready to say, I was trying to think of what the title was. I knew it was something Harvest. Yes.
Yeah. So A Strange Harvest. So she talks to Bill and George Yarnell in there. And so I really look, and a lot of those articles that Jean had given me were about the mutilations. They were occurring daily, not only of cattle, but of horse, of sheep, of dog. And what was interesting talking to Bill Wall's wife was that he kept a map in the police station there in Kiowa, and they were tracking not only mutilations that were going on in Elbert County, but they were happening in Montana, in Wyoming, in Texas, in Oklahoma, in Utah. I think there was even a couple in Arizona. So it was this whole section down the middle of the United States. And we had these strange, mysterious helicopter that were chasing young people. So there were newspaper articles written about these strange, mysterious helicopters flying off of properties. And at the time, they were speculating that the helicopters were connected to the mutilation. And there was definitely a military presence out there. When I got the articles from Dr. Sprinkle, about the property, they were talking about, somebody from Fort Carson being on the property, and talking about when he was on the ranch property, he felt something take over his mind, would make him walk towards the woods, would release him, and he'd run back up to the ranch house. And this did this to him like 5 times, which of course made me think of things like DARPA, mind control, black access projects, that kind of thing. We know NORAD was aware of what was happening out there. And in fact, I was at a conference in Laughlin, and Richard Doty happened to be out there. And I'm sure a lot of your listeners know the history of Richard Doty and all that stuff. But I was curious if he had heard of or knew about that ranch property. And he said that he was very much aware of it. One of the questions, and the reason I research it so much, is I've always been really curious at how much of it is actual UFO, paranormal, unknown activity, and how much of it is our own military black access projects and nefarious things. And that kind of goes along with, because I don't know if you have the map, but close to that property at the time, the Air Force Academy property went pretty close to where this property is located. And so we have so many military bases down here in Colorado Springs. And I don't know what they were doing out there, but I find it curious that we have our Navy people.
I'm sorry, is it number 5?
It might be, yeah. Let's just pull it up and see. Yep, there we go. So the red the red star there is where the ranch is located. So you see, you have the Air Force Academy there. You have Cheyenne Mountain, NORAD, Fort Carson, Scrivener, and Peterson, all right in that area. And then there's also another place there called Butte, which has one of the largest military helicopter. There's so many helicopters there. So what were they doing out there in Elbert County? I don't know. We have the Titan missile silos that were out there. Another interesting thing that I pulled out of the briefing document that John Schuessler had given me is the story about these 2 A-7D interceptors that crashed out there. Oh, that's a graphic I made there that kind of showed all the activity in a nutshell. So had the shadow figures, which is a whole other phenomenon that we can talk about later. But the UFOs, the orbs, the helicopters, the cattle mutilations, these strange disappearing boxes, and Bigfoot creatures were spotted out there as well. My sister and I, one memory that I specifically have, and my sister has as well, is, springtime in Colorado, you get a wet, heavy snow, and we were out there. It was a sunny day. We're tossing the Frisbee out in front of the ranch house, and we looked down, and the dirt was completely dry and nothing grew, and it was a perfect circle, but yet all the wet snow was around it. And so that's a memory we have. It was just really strange and really eerie. You always felt watched out there. And in this briefing document, they actually talk about 2 of these circles out there that they actually found and measured. And it confirmed in there that nothing grew. The snow would not stay in these locations. The investigator in me kind of wants to go, well, was there a silo there? Was there something there that caused that? But there wasn't. So I don't know what that was. And in fact, in this document here, it actually says the investigators, when they were out there investigating, there were droplets of blood outside the circle. So I don't know if a craft landed to do a mutilation or what. And just to get back to the mutilations a little bit, because, a lot of people believe that those were all done by the military, kind of case closed, case over. But I've researched, or I've interviewed some people that have some highly unusual stories about mutilations. And one, in fact, is a woman named Sheila. I won't give her last name, but right out of high school, her whole town, or her whole family, kind of pioneered Kiowa, right? So if you go to the museum there in Elbert County, you'll see a lot about her family. And right out of high school, she married and moved to Rama, Colorado, which is really close to Kiowa. And they had several hundred acres of a cattle ranch. And her husband was out on horseback checking the cows for calves, and he came across a dead calf. And the calf had 4 incisions, cut in a perfect square. And the top of the fur was removed, but the skin was still there, is what Sheila was saying. And so her husband gets on the horse, goes back to the ranch, and they go back in the pickup truck. And that, she said, took about 20 minutes. And when they got back, the calf had been completely mutilated, cauterized, organs removed, blood drained, no helicopter noise. They were miles off the county road, no footprints, no tracks, no nothing. They felt like they were being watched. She said it was really eerie. And then what was really neat about it is she's like, on Facebook, she's like, Katie, you're not going to believe this. I found the actual photographs from that calf. And I think I sent those to you. Do you have the pictures of the calf?
Let's see here. I should have had that legend right here. Is it just a cat? Oh, looks like number 14, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Yep, that's it. So the one on the left is the calf that had the 4 incisions, and you see how it's cauterized, and yeah, but the one on the right, she said that's a picture that she found of calves on their property that a coyote would jump on and just tear at the calves and eat them alive. Right. And I'm sorry for the graphic nature of the photographs, but it shows you the difference, right? Yeah. Of a coyote kill and this mutilations that were going on.
Ripped. The one on the right is ripped and pulled, and that other one is cut.
Cauterized.
Very strange.
And what's interesting about this too, people often ask, is this still going on? Well, not to the extent it was, back in the day, but we still, matter of fact, when I was out there interviewing her, she now lives in Wyoming. She actually said, ranchers, they know all other ranchers or a lot of other ranchers. And she had a picture of another cow that had just been mutilated. And a lot of times these ranchers won't report it anymore because this has been going on for decades. Yeah. They know they don't get compensated. They don't want the publicity or the stigma, or they don't want people thinking they're crazy. So they don't even report them anymore, but it is still happening.
Wow.
For sure. It's still happening.
It seemed like there was sort of a spate of cattle mutilations in the 90s around, the San Luis Valley and other places, I guess. Because I remember hearing about mutilations, around the country. But you're right. It is mostly in that band of states in Central America.
Yeah, it's really, really fascinating. And I know Chuck Zukowski, he's researched a lot on the cattle mutilations, as well as Christopher O'Brien, and he's written a couple really good books, Mystery Stalks the Prairie and all that. So if you're interested in that topic, I recommend, Christopher O'Brien's books on that.
Yeah, I know Chris, and I've had him on a few different shows, different TV shows and stuff, talking about this very thing. Not only the mutilations, but other strange occurrences out there. Just it sounds very similar to what you're talking about. Only it seems like there's a lot more activity, a lot more different types of activity on the ranch that you're talking about, or on that area where you're talking about, because it was just mainly the mutilations, but they were like beams of light and things like that were hard to explain. But I don't remember, Bigfoot sightings or any of the other.
And the interesting thing about these Bigfoot sightings, to me and to my sister as well, it seemed like these Bigfoot or Sasquatch, whatever word you prefer, were connected to the craft that were seen there. And, I think it's Stan Gordon wrote a book of that. Yeah, I think it's Stan Gordon wrote a book that kind of speaks about this, and almost like bodyguards or workers. There were also ET being seen out on the property. I didn't personally see any ETs out there, but like I said, I wasn't out there very often. But the adults there, and it was witnessed by several different people, and they said there were two types of ETs seen out on that ranch property, and they appeared to be in conflict with one another. One was very like a robotic AI type of creature, and the other one was very Nordic looking. And what's interesting, when I went to Dr. Sprinkles to get the documents and the files on this case, there were sketches drawn back in the day of not only the Bigfoot creature, but also the ET creatures. And they were very unusual. So I didn't share them with anybody because I wanted to see if I could find anybody else out there that had a similar type of ET. Yeah. And so at the time I was the guest speaker coordinator for Colorado MUFON, and there was a gentleman that had written a book called Flashbacks, and his name's Sean Bartok. And so we invited him to come speak, and he was giving his presentation. I'm sitting there like in the third row watching, and his property in the book actually was in Castle Rock, Colorado, but turns out he changed the location to save. It turns out it was 14 miles from the ranch. Okay. So closer than Castle Rock even. And he brings up drawings of these ET beings that he had encountered. And my jaw was like, oh, wow. I couldn't believe the similarities of the two. We never knew of each other. We didn't know each other. Different. I mean, just 14 miles away. Very similar, very similar. He had the circles on the grounds, ET beings. He even had like footsteps in the snow that he captured on photograph. Wow. The humming sounds, all of it. So I don't know if you have those pictures of the ET beings that were seen out there. And Sean, I compared the two next to each other so people can see. There we go. So the one on the left, this weird like spindly spider thing with the box, that was one of the original sketches at Dr. Leo Sprinkles. And these AI, the idea there, I was just like in line at the grocery store, and those were photographs from Popular Mechanic. And it just dawned on me because of like how the neck is. I'm like, maybe those were AI. And then we had these strange like mechanical sounding boxes that would disappear. I thought maybe they're connected to the weird boxes out there. But the one on the right is Sean Bartok's with those tubes that came out. And the little picture in the left there is the one from Sean Bartok. So the same kind of shape of eyes, the same wrinkles on the forehead, the same wrinkles around the mouth, the same, it's just so similar. And then the tubes in his neck, he said those tubes would come out and make like the one on the ranch property. So they're very similar to one another. Yeah. So that was
the tubes. What are the tubes?
Yeah. I don't know if they're a breathing apparatus, because they were said the one on the ranch said to have like some sort of like helmet over his head. And so I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if
I've often wondered if sometimes they're wearing something that, that allows them to be in this atmosphere. You know, when people describe them in different ways, I'm wondering, is that a suit or is that the way they look?
Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, in that drawing, that box thing looks really flat, but in the document, it actually describes that it's coming out a little bit. So, you know, I don't know what that is. If there's an apparatus or something in there, I don't know. But I never witnessed those personally myself, but they were said to be there. And then since in my research, I learned of another ranch location out there called the Buffalo Ranch. And there was a person named Jeffrey Sailors, and I've tried to reach out to Jeffrey several times, and he's never gotten back to me. I don't know why. But he kind of fell off the radar, I guess. And he had very similar things on his ranch as well. It's very close to Kiowa, and he had mutilation of buffalo. So,
wow.
Yeah, which I hadn't heard of before.
That's sad. So, well, they're all sad, but
right. Yeah.
Buffalo are just so precious.
Yeah.
But goodness, so is this a place where, like, you know, the Uinta Valley, where the Skinwalker Ranch is? I know Native Americans have these legends about the Skinwalker, and they, you know, avoid certain areas. Is that the same way? Do people? And I had something similar in Oklahoma where I grew up. There was a lake, and there was supposed to be a monster in the lake, and the Native Americans would never go in the lake.
Right.
And one time my parents were fishing out there with another couple, and three of them had walked on down, and my mom was sitting by herself on the bank, and she saw this thing come out of the water.
Oh, wow.
And she said it looked like it was just stood up almost, and then it went. She said, "I've never seen anything like it." And I said, "Oh my God, you saw the monster!" But anyway, there things like that where they say don't go there.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up, because when I went to go interview Bill Wall's wife and son, they talked about, and they lived on this property there in Kiowa for years, right, as the sheriff, and there was a big barn, and they said nobody would go near that barn. Never. Nobody went in it. Nobody went ever. Like the husband, nobody. And she said there was something about that barn. It was like wow. Eerie, creepy. And that's something I want to touch on too. When I just went to Vernal, Utah, and I got to visit the Blind Frog Ranch, and I haven't been on Skinwalker Ranch yet, but I hope to someday. But the Blind Frog, I was really curious about the energy and how it felt there, because that's one thing I remember from my childhood is how you felt when you were there. It was this eerie, ominous, like you're being watched, heavy, kind of uneasy feeling. It's like if you go into a really haunted building, or you know somebody's behind you, or maybe you're in danger. It's something like that, and it's something you don't forget. So I was curious if I would feel that way at the Blind Frog Ranch, and I didn't. Actually, the energy there was really positive, and it felt really good. But I don't know if it would feel that way at the Skinwalker Ranch. And I'm also curious to see here in the next couple months when I get to go visit the property again, which I'm a little uneasy about, if I feel that way again.
Don't go alone.
Yeah, no, I won't be alone. I would not do that. I will not go there alone. No way. But something else that we could touch on really quick is a lot of paranormal things happen there as well. And so my mom, my sister, and I lived about an hour away from the ranch property, and things were happening at my house as well. Shadow figures in the room, paranormal things all the time, but I compartmentalized them, and I never connected them to the ranch. I always thought as they were like separate things. And it wasn't until the Skinwalkers at the Pentagon book that came out just recently that George Knapp and they were talking about people that would visit Skinwalker Ranch would have this hitchhiker effect, and they would see shadow figures and, you know, blue orbs and things like that. And I've encountered that blue orb as well. And so I guess maybe these things are connected, and I don't know if this phenomenon, if you go to these locations, if they can attach to people as well. So,
oh my gosh.
You know, yeah. But it was really, really terrifying.
That's a little bit of a deterrent. But, you know, you said that you always felt like you're being watched, and it reminded me of down in Oklahoma, several years ago, I did a documentary about Bigfoot in that area called Bigfootville for Discovery Channel, and the people in Oklahoma that lived in this one area, it's all very rural, on farms and stuff. They called the Bigfoot the noticers.
Oh, like the watchers.
The noticers. And he said, yes, because they stand on the hillsides and they notice everything you do. No. And I thought, oh, that sounds weird.
Yeah.
But, maybe it's the Bigfoot that are watching you.
Yeah. And the reports out there at the time, like they were like banging on the walls and would stand by the barn. And they actually, in the reports I found, actually had hair samples and castings of the Bigfoots out there. And what's interesting too, because if you go to like Google Maps and you look up Kiowa or Elbert County, it has treed areas like ponderosa pines, but they're like patches of trees. It's not like you would think there would be a full-time family of Bigfoot or Sasquatch all the time. So to me, that would indicate they would have to be interdimensional or traveling with the craft, because there's no way these creatures would go unnoticed there if they were there all the time. Yeah. It's just because there's a lot of prairie land too.
Do you think they might be migrating? Or
I wouldn't think so. You would think they would be spotted. I don't know.
Yeah, there's got to be something. And Medicine Man told me that they follow the rivers. They follow the rivers. But he said, we call them Ihoza because it means make you forget. You see them, but you don't remember.
Well, that would explain a lot with me, because I have a whole periods blocked up. Oh my goodness.
Now maybe you have. Oh my gosh. You might have some Bigfoot missing time there.
Yeah, no kidding.
Oh my goodness. So now this shadow type creatures, are they it seemed like they were really, really big.
They were tall.
Yeah, really tall. And what did they do?
So I'm 9 to 12 years old at the time, and big sister, I never slept alone during these times. I mean, I had to sleep with somebody. We had the bed up against the wall, check the closet, check under the beds, but I would see them in the doorway or standing next to my bed, like little kids and of course, when you're little, oh, it's your imagination. No, no, it was not. They would stand at the foot of my bed, and they would either be 2 or 3 of them, never just one. And I was terrified. And you would hear footsteps all the time. I mean, to the point where like I was in middle school and kids would make fun of you, your house is haunted. Da, 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 da. And I really never connected all that to the ranch activity. But now after all the research I'm doing, maybe they were connected. I don't know. Yeah.
It could have been.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like somehow you're having these experiences on your own. But yeah, it does sound similar to what's going on at the ranch, and maybe it was because of your connection.
Right. Another cool article I found in that pile of articles about things happening on the day was this metal material that was found out there. And there's a photograph of the metal material. And in the article, it says they were taking it and testing it and da, 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 da. And of course, who knows what happened to that? But boy, if we could get our hands on that, that's interesting.
Oh,
and then I also, and then with the 2 A7Ds that crashed, I FOIA'd Kirkland Air Force Base here, and I got a big old thing back here. I don't know if you can see how thick that is.
Wow.
And so going through this document, what I learned about this was 2 interceptors were scrambled out of Buckley Air Force Base. Right now it's Space Force, but back then it was Buckley Air Force Base. And this was at night. This is supposedly was a instructor and a student. And supposedly they did have 255 rounds of live ammunition on the aircraft, on the A-7Ds. And according to this document, One of the causes for the crash is that the instructor misidentified another aircraft and hit the tail of the student, and both pilots ejected. Both pilots survived, but both airplanes were a complete loss. But they never identified what the other aircraft was, and they don't mention it anywhere else in this report, just the one time. They don't identify it as a Cessna or anything, and they have the transcripts of the tower. And interesting, just like always, you can, you're reading, it's getting really juicy, you're getting to the good parts,
and then it's redacted.
And then it's all redacted out. And I'm just like, darn it, But no, it's very suspicious. And actually in the briefing document in Dr. Leo Sprinkle's folders, it said that because George Yarnell and Bill Wall were up in airplanes all the time. And in fact, they had a no-fly zone. So the airport at the time was Stapleton. Stapleton issued a no-fly zone for a while, and the Colorado Bureau of Investigations was involved in all this, because you have to remember, we didn't have cell phones or all this kind of stuff. Ranchers and farmers, they were arming themselves with rifles at the door. There was a $10,000 reward for catching the people mutilating the cattle. So people were like on patrol looking actively for the perpetrators of these things. Nobody was ever caught. Nobody was ever found. But it was really a tense time. Like, people were really frightened at the time, right? So they were up in helicopters, and they issued a no-fly zone. And Bill Waugh talks about they actually saw a UFO while they were up in the aircraft. And in Dr. Leo Sprinkle Sings, it says in there that the two A-7Ds that crashed were in pursuit of a UFO.
Oh.
Right.
Oh, wow. Well, no wonder they didn't put what aircraft it was in the report, in the official report.
Yeah, and then I went to David Marler's and was doing some research there recently, and I found some articles of NORAD actually scrambling a couple jets in pursuit of an unknown UFO on radar out of Canada. So I'm like, see, they admitted that they did that. So they've done it before. Why wouldn't they do it in this case?
Exactly. Wonder what that was about.
Yeah.
Maybe because there was a crash involved.
There could be.
Yeah. They didn't want to own up to that. I don't know.
Yeah. I've thought about like underground bases. Were they digging tunnels out there? I've tried to think of everything, and I keep at this, and people will sometimes ask, like, it's been so long ago, why are you still so obsessed with this? And my answer is because we don't have answers to it yet, right? And my hope is someday that we're going to get like a deathbed confession from somebody in the Air Force that was out there that has some answers. Like, come on, somebody throw me a bone here. I want some answers. Because this has impacted my whole life, and others. I mean, I have a list of like an Excel spreadsheet that my sister helped me put together of like 250 names that we pulled out of those articles, So this,
wow. You guys are serious as a heart attack.
Right.
In the chat room, we have a question for you from Victoria. She
Hi,
says,
Victoria. I know Victoria.
Hi. She says, here in Texas, we have stories of the chupacabra. Do you have stories like that in Colorado?
Well, actually, we do. We have pterodactyl stories, and there are crypto creatures that were reported on the ranch property as well, but they were of large birds, like thunderbirds. Same with Sean Bartok. He talked about these crypto birds, not necessarily a chupacabra, but crypto creatures nonetheless. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the stories coming out of Skinwalker was that they would see like a portal opening up and sort of creatures coming out of it.
Someone crawled out of it, ran off, and you can only see it with the night vision goggles. I think that was correct. Yeah, and there was a couple people that didn't have them, and they couldn't see it, but the ones with the night vision, so like a different light spectrum, they saw this thing open and this creature run out. And to me, that would make more sense as far as the crypto creatures and the Bigfoot creatures that were spotted out there, and the disappearing boxes. Bill Wall, the sheriff,
that they go in and out of somewhere, and we don't see them running around loose.
Right. Yeah. Bill Wall talks. He talks about that he was on patrol, and he sees a lit box, just like we saw on the ranch property with these lights, and this thing would make a noise like a bee sound. Okay. And so he sees this box. It's next to a tree, and he doesn't want to approach the box. There's no roads there, nothing there. It's in the middle of nowhere. So he goes back into town to get a posse sheriff. When he goes back to where the box is, he said not only was the box gone, but the tree was gone. And as they approached it, it was like they could see it going into the ground.
Whoa.
And this is from the sheriff. Yeah. And interestingly enough, too, I mean, that's why they changed the name of the town. They changed the name of the people because they didn't want attention. They weren't trying to sell books. They weren't trying to get on TV. They were scared. They didn't want stigma. They weren't, I mean, to me, they're very credible people. And if you read the reports, the family that I knew that moved out there was like rumors like, oh, maybe they're on drugs, they're city folk, because they moved from the city to the country. They've always dreamed of having it. So it was the mid-70s. They had a little bit longer hair. But the father, I knew them well. The father went on to be a police officer later on and drove a Vespa with his briefcase. So I'm like, these guys were not like using drugs and stuff. It was not true.
That's funny. But yeah, I mean, I found when working on these types of stories and these types of things that people that are really going through these experiences, they're not that keen to talk about it mostly. And I know, like, for instance, the Bigfootville documentary, we had nurses, teachers, bankers, all these people. And I mean, the best stories were almost impossible to get because they did not want to be laughed at. They'd been laughed at all over town already. And
that's true. And for me, like the people that lived there full time, they had 3 sons. 2 of their sons lived with us during the week to attend Cherry Creek School District. It was a bigger school district instead of the small little Kiowa school. The oldest son stayed living on the property all the time. And I've reached out to the 3 boys, the youngest one in particular, and none of them want to talk about it. They've all moved out of state. They were terrified. It affected their mother, their father, and they still don't want anything to do with it. And plus we were threatened and warned never to talk about it in the first place. And so, but I think I'm just far enough removed from the situation, having only been there a handful of times, that I'm able to maybe research it from a distance, having just a few experiences and not living there full time. But yeah, that is so true. There's so many people that I've approached that I've wanted to interview or talk to, and they don't want people to know. They don't want to be laughed at or made fun of. Because
who warned you? People that had been there and had the experiences, or?
Well, it's interesting. My mom and her boyfriend that owned the ranch, they told me and my sister not to talk about it. But that warning came directly from this disembodied electrical voice that happened one night on the ranch property, which actually my sister and I remember very well. It was their mother's birthday. And my sister and I were over there, and the 3 boys and me and my sister were in the room, and the adults were playing board games till early in the morning. All the power in the house went out. The humming sound started up. Saw the brightest white light out of the boys' bedroom window I've ever seen in my life, brighter than the sun. And at that time, this disembodied electrical voice, it sounded like it came from every corner of the house, basically said something along the lines of, attention, we've allowed you to remain. Your friends will be instructed to remain silent concerning us. Don't take action, which will cause you to regret, blah, blah, blah. And so my sister and I had memories of this, and it's actually written in this document. And when I read that, I was like, holy crap, it actually happened. Like, because when you're a little girl, you're like, was that real? Did that happen? What was that? And did
it happen to someone else too? Or,
there was all the adults, there was I don't know how many adults were in that front room. Well, I could say 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 5, and then 3, 4, 5 kids. So there was at least 10 of us in that house when that happened.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, this phenomenon was witnessed by dozens of people because they would have friends over at the house that would stay all the time, and the ranch hand witness stuff. And I mean, so, and all sorts of people in the town that are in these articles had all sorts of unusual activity,
Yeah. So. I mean, it makes you want to go there or
or
get
not
the hell
go
as
there.
far away from it as you possibly can. One of the two.
Right.
Probably go there and then run away.
Right. Yeah. And as fate would have it too, my youngest son at the time, this was years ago, he was still in elementary school. He's 20 now. And his teacher, I'll just call him Mr. C, and he had him for 2 years because they kept the same teacher for 2 years. And he kind of learned about, what Tyler's mom's into. And he so happened to live in Kiowa. And I'm like, you live there? Because it's still a pretty small town and pretty far away from the school, like an hour away. And he goes, yeah, I live there. I said, so have you experienced anything out there? Do things still happen? And he said, Mr. C said, yes, absolutely. They see lights flying off still. So things still go on. Yeah. I was like, wow. Oh, yeah. Report it.
It would be neat to get like a whole bunch of people maybe and go. I mean, there's strength in numbers, and go and have a night watch or something. But do things happen during the day as well?
Yeah, I experienced that box in the day. Me, the youngest son and the father, we were in a pickup truck. They had their dogs, the hound dogs. We were going just driving in the truck in the back, Ponderosa Pines behind the ranch house. And we get out of the truck for some reason. I don't even remember why, but we look and we see the lit box in the tree line. And the guy's like, the box, get in the truck. And we look back and the box was gone. And that was in the day. That was in the daytime. Yeah. So I don't know what's up with those boxes. And that's something I didn't talk about for a long time because it just sounds so crazy. Like, how can just something disappear like that? But something disappeared like that.
Yeah. And those boxes were supposed to be dangerous to be near, right?
Yeah. In the report, and the adults in there said if a Sasquatch, well, the ETs said, these are dangerous, don't approach them. The tone of the box changed to like an angry bee sound, and it took a Sasquatch or Bigfoot down. Yep. Like they were lethal.
I wonder what those are for. Why?
I don't know.
There?
I don't know, but I know we're running out of time here. We just have a few minutes left.
But are.
I know, darn it. But I gave a talk in Laughlin, and I had a nice lady come up to me after, and she said, because one of the things the ranchers would talk about, and Sheila talked about, is that on the ranches where the cattle were being mutilated, the cows that were being mutilated would herd together and they were calm, but the adjoining pastures, they would be all scattered and freaked out. So somebody had said, do you think those boxes were like a hypnotic device or would calm the cattle or emit a sound, like sort of, you know what I'm saying?
That's that's as good an idea as any. And with
that's
that,
what I thought.
I'm afraid we're going to have to go.
Yeah.
It's time to say goodnight, but thank you so much.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Paige, for coming on. You got to come back and tell us more and give us updates on what's going on out there. That is so amazing.
Would love to. Thanks for having me on, Renee.
For joining us tonight. Be kind, everyone, because, we're all fighting our battles. So always be kind to each other. Take care. Bye.